Good morning. And happy Labor Day weekend, happy college football weekend. And just as soon as I said that, somebody came out and said, well, the real season starts Thursday night. So I guess happy pro football beginning for those of you, whatever fans you are this weekend. Happy beginning of the fall season, getting back in routines and all of that. So anyway, today I want to tell you a Bible story. So you can just sit back and enjoy a neat Old Testament Bible story that maybe you've not even heard of before. That anytime you speak a message, it's kind of like a novelist is writing a novel. You know, you have to make sure that you stick with the main plot. And I'm sure when you write a novel that there's always, you know, when you read one, it touches on all kinds of things. So the temptation is to go in other directions. And so I want to make sure I stick to the main plot today, because I'm going to be speaking in 2 Samuel 18. And I encourage you to read the larger context. The larger context is about David, King David, and his son Absalom. Absalom has recruited an army to himself and is going to try to kill his father, King David, and take over the kingdom and be the king. We watch Egypt and we watch Syria and all that's going on currently today in the overthrow of governments, and they don't have anything over these biblical stories. If you want to go and read the intrigue and the relationships and all the stuff and the betrayal and the things that go on, it's an incredible story. But I just say all of this to say that the temptation for me is to deal with this heart-wrenching, heartbreaking story of a father and his son, King David and Absalom. But I'm going to stick to the main plot. And the main plot is going to be about this guy named Ahimaaz. He's a subplot in all of this. And I'll try to fill in the story and tell you the story. And then at some point we're going to read some scripture when we get to Ahimaaz, but not quite yet. I won't start there. I'll just tell you the story and tell you what's going on. So I'll start with Ahimaaz. Ahimaaz is the son of Zadok, the high priest, in King David's time in that thing. In fact, he is what we would call today a PK, a preacher's kid. Yeah, he's a preacher's kid. But because he's the son of the high priest, I mean, he is circulating in among the high government officials, and he is privy to conversations that the average person would never hear or see. So he's a very up-and-coming young man, very brave young man. And in fact, he and another PK, Jonathan, son of another priest, were acting as spies in one little subset story around this area. In fact, Absalom had been planning this overthrow and this battle and everything like that. And Ahimaaz and his friend Jonathan overheard some strategic plans. And they were trying their best to get back to King David to get him the word so that he would know what was taking place. And at the same time, he had Absalom's soldiers trying to find them so they could kill them. And would have, except for the help of another lady who was very brave in herself. She hid them in their well, put them down in the well, spread a cloth over the top of the well, and put grain and everything up on top of the cloth, so that when the soldiers came and asked her where they were and did she see them, said, oh, they left, they're gone. And there they were down in the well. So she was probably just as brave as the guys were brave too. But it worked. And anyway, they were able to get through. But I just say that to say he's a brave man. He's also fast. He would have been a member of the Olympic team. I mean, he was probably the fastest runner in Israel. He was known for his speed, and you'll see it later on in the story. You'll see it later on in the story that how they even recognize him by how he runs. You know, sometimes runners have very distinct styles of running to where, so if you could see them a long way off, you could say, oh, that's Ahimaaz. That's him. He's very, very fast runner and was known for his running and his prowess in the running area. He was a very upcoming young man under the reign of David. He was committed to David and perfectly willing to die for David. Now, what's about to happen? Joab, who's kind of the general of David's forces, they're getting ready to go to battle with Absalom's forces and the people that he's recruited together. And they're going to fight. They're basically going to fight in a forest. And it's about 20 miles from any city, and it's on the east bank of the Jordan. And they're getting ready to do this battle and to go to war. And Joab makes David wants to go and fight in the battle. I mean, you know, that's what a lot of the times they'd do that. They'd fight in the battle. But Joab said, no, you stay in the city. You stay in the city while we go fight the battle for a couple of reasons. One, if we need supplies or if we need anything, we'll send word back and you can make sure we get it. But basically they were concerned for his safety. I mean, they said, if you go into battle with us, just as soon as they see you, they'll want to kill you. Just as soon as they kill you, everything will be done. So we want you safe. We want you back out of the way. Absalom, on the other hand, was just opposite. Absalom was going to go into the battle. He was going to lead his troops into the battle. In fact, that's what they do. As the battle starts, Absalom is in there spurring and leading his men on, and a strange and unexpected turn of events occurs. Absalom's riding a mule. I don't know. Didn't know mules did battle, but anyway, that's what the Bible said. He's riding a mule, and he's in the forest, and he grows a little bit careless. And he's coming through on his mule, and he hits a low limb, and it catches him right in the neck. And the limb gets him, and the mule goes on out, and there he is dangling from the limb. He's unable to get loose. He's unable to get out. He can't touch the ground. And he's in a very, very precarious situation, as you can imagine. Now, some of the soldiers of Joab see this. They see what has happened, and they notice he's in this predicament and this circumstance, but they also remember something that King David told Joab and the other generals before the battle. It'd be interesting to hear what a general tells his troops before they go into war. But you know what King David said to his troops? It's a very unusual thing. Here he's about to be overthrown by his son. And here's the direction that he gives his generals in front of everybody. Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And so these soldiers that saw him dangling from the tree, they go back and they tell Joab. They say, he's dangling from the tree. And General Joab says, well, did you kill him? He says, no, we didn't kill him. He said, don't you remember what King David said? He said, be gentle with him. He said, we heard that. We know that. And just throwing caution to the wind, Joab goes and finds where he's dangling from the limb, takes 3 javelins and puts them through the heart of Absalom. And he's got 10 armor bearers there that have come with him, and they take him down and finish him off. And they go and bury him. And the war's over. The battle's won. King David is king of Israel. And that brings me to the scripture that I want to read to you. When Ahimaaz now comes up to Joab, and we pick up the conversation that. Now Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has vindicated him by delivering him from the hand of the enemies. You are not the one to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today because the king's son is dead. Now note there, Ahimaaz knows that Absalom's dead. He knows the king's son is dead. That's what Joab just said. It's going to be very important later on in the story to realize he knew that. Then Joab said to the Cushite, the general said to a slave, in essence, "Go tell the king what you've seen." The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again, he comes back again to Joab after the Cushite has left. "Come what may. I don't care what happens. Come what may. Let me run behind the Cushite." But Joab said, "My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward." He said, "Come what may, I want to run." So Joab said, and I might add, probably in disgust, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain and outran the Cushite. Ahimaaz comes back that second time. He says, "Look, I want to go. I want to be the one to send the news. I guarantee you." I mean, here's kind of what he's thinking. You know, he's thinking that I'll get a reward. He's thinking, I can go and do that. And I'll be there first. I'll give the king the good news, and I'll be promoted in the army. I'll get a position. I mean, he's ambitious, and he's looking forward to being able to be the one that brings the good news. He knew the country well, and he took off on that trip. He's running. David, in the meantime, they've positioned themselves up on the wall. They're looking for news from the battle. And so they're watching, and after a while, they begin to see somebody coming. And they look, and as it gets a little closer, David, he said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." So you can see, he was known for his running ability. So long before he gets there, the king knows that Ahimaaz is coming and that he's bringing news from the battle. Now, they also see the second person. They look, and they're able to see the Cushite back behind him. He's running, and they see a second person coming, and he's coming with the message that Joab had told him to tell. Now, when the young man Ahimaaz gets there where they are in the presence of David, he just cries out one word: "Shalom." Shalom. Now, they still use that word in Israel, and basically if you read it, I know in my Bible it just says, "All is well." That's what he said. All is well. And it means so much more than all is well. But it was the kind of word that David understood what had taken place. David understood, David knew that the battle had been won. He knew that he was king. He knew that everything was fine and okay. And he gets there, and David asks Ahimaaz this question. I mean, of all the questions that could be asked, of everything that could be said when you're bringing news from the battle, you know what question King David asks this news runner, this Ahimaaz? He says, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" That's all he wanted to know. And look what happens. I mean, it hit Ahimaaz for the first time, what he had done. I don't think it ever occurred to him why Joab had asked him the question of, "Why do you want to run? You don't have any news today. There's no reward." I don't think it ever occurred to him. And now here he was standing in the presence of the king, thinking that he would give the good news that the battle was won, and that the king would be excited and would give him a promotion. And now he's realized that he's going to have to tell the king that his son is dead, and that in anger the king might turn on him right there and kill him on the spot, thinking that maybe it was him. Maybe he was the one that had killed him. And staring that in the face, realizing what he had done, he began to stammer and stutter. And here's what he said: "I saw great confusion, just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." I don't know what happened. I mean, there's confusion everywhere. I don't know what happened. It's just a mess. He just totally lied about it to escape with his life. And David told him, said, step aside. And the Cushite comes into the presence. The same question again to the Cushite. Is the young man Absalom safe? Of course, you remember, Joab didn't try to cover anything up. He told the Cushite, go tell him what he saw. And the Cushite said this, may the enemies of my Lord the king and all who rise to harm you be like that young man. He was saying to him that Absalom was dead. And then came that lament, this horrible, horrible lament. If you're reading in 2 Samuel 18, when you get to it, King David starts weeping. And he says, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son. Now you see, here's the temptation right now, is to veer off and talk about a father and his love for his son. And then talk about a father in the loss of a son or a child. No matter what's going on in the dynamics. Some of that is only what you would understand if you've lost a child and what's involved in all of that. But we're going to stick to the main plot. It's not Jesse's son, David. It's Zadok's son, Ahimaaz, that I want to talk about. What a question. What an answer. What a question Joab had given to him. It says, why will you run? Why? Why are you going to do it? And I'm sure it fell on deaf ears. I mean, I'm sure he's saying to himself, you know, and he's too afraid to say this to Joab, but he's saying to himself, you know, what do you mean there'll be no reward? I mean, the battle is won. Absalom is dead, and the enemy is flown, and the king, David, is king. Don't stand in my way. I'm the fastest runner. I can outrun that Cushite. I mean, I can still get a break. I can get this new position in the army by bringing the news. You know, come what may, I want to run. And Joab saw he's being maneuvered into a position where he's keeping a young man from advancing and getting a promotion, and he just looks at him and just flatly says, run. And run he did. A silly race that got him into a trap in which he lied to try to escape. Now, I think there's something about that question. Why are you running? It's as common and relevant today as it was in that day. People need to ask themselves, why do I run? I mean, maybe this is a good Labor Day exercise when, you know, all of us laborers get a day off and rest. Maybe part of the exercise ought to be, why not labor? Why not do? Why not live life the way I do? Why am I running? I mean, we're in a very rapidly moving world, and every one of us has been programmed to run. Remember years ago, bear with me for a short football illustration, when Bill Parcells retired. He had one of the greatest pro football coaches that had lived, coached 2 Super Bowls, won 2 Super Bowls. But when he gave it up, just says, I quit. He read to his players a poem called The Man in the Glass. He says, when you get what you want in your struggle for self and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your parents, your children, or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. Some people may think you a straight shooting chum and call you a wonderful guy, but the man in the glass says you're only a bum if you can't look at him straight in the eye. He's the fellow to please, never mind the rest. For he's with you clear up to the end. and you've passed your most dangerous, difficult test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of life and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartaches and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass. I remember when I was a young boy, my dad cooked breakfast for us when we got up in the morning. He used to run a grocery store early in his life, but he taught school later. But one of the things he brought home when he gave up the grocery store were these little bells. You ever go in for customer service and you go ding, 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 ding on the bell? My dad had one sit up on the stove. And when breakfast was done, ding, 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 ding. You know, hit the floor running, Roy. I hit the floor running. I never thought to ask why. Daddy just said do it. It's a question that we need to ask. Why are we running? What's it all about? Don't give me the job. This stuff, I got to be at my job. I've got to do that. You know, the real question is we've been reprogrammed to run. We've got a motor on the inside, and it's racing wildly. And it's difficult to turn it off at night so that the market is full of sleep aids to help us to go to sleep. There are people who cannot go to sleep on any night till they've had a few drinks to try to slow the motor down just to get some sleep. I want to ask all of us this morning, why are we running? Have you ever thought to ask yourself that question? Why are you running? Dr. E.L. McPhee tells a humorous story when he was pastor of a church in North Alabama. This was years ago, and they were having an administrative board meeting, and somebody came in at the night. It was a night meeting, and they came in and said, "The parsonage is on fire." Of course, Dr. McPhee was the first one out the door. It's his house that was on fire. He was running down there. In fact, the whole board just followed him out. They were running down to see the parsonage on fire. But as it got going, two of the lay people were having a conversation between themselves. And one of them was the chairman of the trustees, but the other one asked the chairman of the trustees, he said, "Is the parsonage covered with insurance?" Chairman of the trustees said, "It's fully covered." I said, "Well, why are we running? Why are we running?" It's covered. It's just a question to ask. Why are we running? Is there any fire that you know about? Are you interested in finding out the truth about life? Do you understand that we're so caught up with speed that we're running and life seems like a blur, and we're not made for speed like that? We come to church with the motor running wild. We wait till the message is over so that we can go out and continue our running. We're caught up, we're running wildly, carrying news that will have no reward. We don't even see each other. A few years ago, they were voting on the #1 rock song. And all the top, what was the rock songs of all time? You know what the #1 was? It was the Rolling Stones song. "I Can't Get No Satisfaction." #1 rock song of all time. Now, for those of you that don't know, I mean, that was written during the time of free love. That was written during a time when the economy was great, unemployment was low, everybody was doing anything that they want to do, kind of like they do now. And right in the midst of all of that, they couldn't get no satisfaction. Why are you running? Ahimaaz knew that Absalom was dead. He knew that the battle had been won. What he did not know was the question that the king was going to ask when he got into his presence. Now, will you give me about 2 minutes to make an application for you this morning? 2,000 years ago, another king lost his son tragically, killed at a youthful age, nailed to the cross. The name of that king's son was Jesus. One of these days, you and I are going to run right into his presence. We're going to race right into his presence. And I can assure you, he's got a question he's going to ask. It's not going to be a pop quiz. Nobody's trying to hide that question. You should not get there. In fact, if you're in the sound of my voice right now, you will not get there without knowing what the question is. We're going to run into his presence. And he's going to say, how is it with my son? So I don't know what you're running for now. Ahimaaz didn't have the right news when he got in the presence of the king. Now's the time for us to make sure we've got the right news when we get in the presence of the king. Why are you running? What's it all about? Have you learned anything? He's going to ask you. Have you learned anything about my son? Have you seen anything about my son? Can you tell me anything about my son? How is it with my son? Why are you running? Make sure you're running for the right reason. Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to come and take communion this morning. We're going to run into your presence even here this morning. It's not the final run. But we come today to receive you into our hearts, in our lives. And I pray your presence would be here with us now. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you for listening to our message today. I hope that you've been inspired to act upon what you've just heard and become a doer of the word. Feel free to contact us through the information on the screen or through our website. Better yet, if you're ever in the Niceville, Florida area, feel free to stop by and visit us at the Niceville United Methodist Church.